So I'm thrilled to be part of this panel this afternoon, talking about a healthier society. I'm going to end today by doing a little storytelling. And so for some of you, this may be your first introduction to what we call the Creative Destruction Lab, which is a wonderful program we have here at Rotman. Some of you may know more about it. But I'm going to tell you the story of how the Creative Destruction Lab tried to turn its machinery, bring its machinery to bear, doing what it could to try to bring the country and hopefully the world out of the pandemic. So a little bit about me. I'm a professor of strategy here at the Rotman School, and I'm the site lead for the Toronto branch of the Creative Destruction Lab. So who are we and what do we do? So the CDL, as we abbreviate our name, is on a mission to accelerate the commercialization of science for the betterment of humankind. What do we mean by that? It sounds like a very noble mission, but the idea is, and really this was the motivation for our founding almost exactly 10 years ago, is that there is incredible research and science being done in universities, and so little of that science actually makes its way out of academia into products and services that make people's lives better. And there's lots of barriers that have been, well documented to why it's so hard to get university science commercialized. And the purpose of CDL was to create a program that can reduce those barriers, increase the likelihood that scientists who do want to start companies can be successful, and help get some of these incredible ideas and incredible innovations that take place in university labs all over the world into businesses, products, and services that actually make a difference. So that's what we do. And we do that by creating what we call a market for judgment. So I hope that some of you on this call recognize this room. It means you were once in my building, and once again, and hopefully sometime in the future, we will again be in the building together. This is the big hall at the Rotman School, Days of Tell Hall, where we used to hold all of the events like this, and where CDL used to operate. This is our marketplace for judgment. What we do at CDL is bring together startups in Toronto, about 200 a year, with an incredible network of mentors who are experienced and exited entrepreneurs, scientists, current operators. And we create a 9-month program through which the founders of the startups and the mentors interact with each other in a very structured way. And we provide that structure and the rules of engagement. The program has now, as I said, we're about to enter our 10th year next year. The hallmark of the program is what we call objective setting. So what our mentors do is not what you see in a lot of other entrepreneurship programs where there's just sort of a series of coffee chats and advice being given, but rather what our mentors do is set objectives, milestones for our companies. And every 8 weeks they meet, like in that picture I showed you, and new objectives get set. The founders come back and have to report on their progress on the previous set of objectives. And this is really the way that we try to transfer judgment from these experienced and successful entrepreneurs to these young founders who are often incredibly technical in nature, but lack a lot of business experience. We measure our success through the equity value we create. So the equity value of our graduate companies, and we've created over $8 billion in equity value. We just had 3 of our alumni companies just pass that $1 billion valuation, which is incredible. When we made these slides about 10 days ago, we had 9 sites around the world. Last week, we just launched our 10th in Seattle. So we now have 10 sites across Canada, United States, and Europe. And we had over 500 companies participate across our global network just in the 2020-21 program year. Here's a map. You can take a quick look at this to get a sense of all of the different areas in which we specialize. Much of our specialization matches to geography. So not surprisingly, we run a program for oceans technology in Halifax at our Atlantic site, and we run a program for energy and as well programs in agriculture at our Rocky site in Calgary. You'll notice, and here I'm getting to the health part, that we run multiple health programs across several of our sites. This is what we used to look like. This is how we've been operating since a year ago, March. And while it's not nearly as much fun as it was in the live session, it's been doing the job and allowing us to continue to do the work that we think is important. So what happened last March? So, we all know what happened last March. Obviously, we were hit by the pandemic. What happened at the Creative Destruction Lab? We went through the process of launching a program that we call CDL Recovery. So back in March 2020, we felt this call to action. right? And remember, what we do at Creative Destruction Lab is try to bring novel solutions to the world. And as we looked around at what was happening, when the pandemic started, we said, look, this is something new to the world. Novel crises need novel responses, and novel responses require innovation. We weren't going to solve the pandemic by just kind of business as usual. We're going to require new ideas, new treatments, new vaccines, new business models, all sorts of new stuff. And we know that innovation is often predicated on insights from science. The CDL program and our community was really laser focused at one thing. We are very, very focused, and we try to do one thing better than anyone else in the world. And that thing we try to do is accelerate the speed at which science is translated into solutions. And so when the pandemic hit, we had multiple conversations, I would say, over the first 4 weeks, after the WHO declared it to actually be a pandemic, about, hey, do we, beyond keeping the lights on and transitioning to a virtual program, do we need to do something here? Bringing our machinery to bear. And what we realized is that honoring our mission at that time meant we'd need to redeploy our community, our staff, and our program to focus on the COVID-19 crisis, because that's what we do. Our starting point was the same as it always is for everything we do, which is economics, right? So CDL operates at the intersection of economics and technology. And the core insight for what we did emerged from this book, The Pandemic Information Gap, which my colleague Joshua Gans, who's also our chief economist at the Creative Destruction Lab, wrote about a month after the pandemic was declared. And he said, wait a minute, this isn't really a health problem, right? The virus makes people sick, and that's a health problem. But the pandemic is an information problem. The problem is we don't know who's infected, who's infectious, and who's immune. And because we don't know that, we have to treat everybody as if they might be infectious, shutting down economies, right? Just think about that. If everybody who was infectious, who had the virus, had a red dot on their forehead or a terrible cough, even if they had the right symptoms, we'd be able to say, wait, you're sick, you stay home. Okay. The problem was we didn't have a way to know that because so many people were asymptomatic. And as a result, we sent everybody home, costing the world economy trillions and trillions of dollars. And so the view we had is, look, the solutions to the health problem, such as vaccines, are 18 months away. Maybe it turned out to be a little bit less than 18 months away. Until those come, we need to actually work on the information problem. And so we designed a summer version of our core program, Admitting Ventures, matching them with mentors, that was totally focused on the information problem, on accelerating the commercialization of what we called information-based solutions, things that helped resolve the uncertainty around who was infectious and who wasn't. And the goal was to do that in order to open the world economy quicker. And so we ran a fantastic program. We quickly, the support we had from our mentors, we had more than 400 mentors from across our global sites participating. We received 550 applications in the span of sort of about 4 weeks that we recruited from 45 countries. We took 99 companies through the program between last May and the end of last July. We had a handful of companies who, over the course of the program, worked with mentors from 6 different CDL sites around the world. Almost 90% were supported by our global net, by multiple mentors from our global program. And we had 53 MBA students from across all of our universities, basically volunteering to work with these companies, helping to accelerate their solutions. I won't, just in the interest of time, I won't go into, all of our mentors, but we drew the ones you would expect to be interested in this and perhaps the one you wouldn't. So the first name, Brenda Fitzgerald, is the former director of the CDC. She's a mentor at our site at Georgia Tech. Seems like an obvious thing for her to be interested in. Dawn Bell is the global development head of strategic partnerships at Novartis. Again, a very natural fit. But if you look at the gentleman, fourth in from the left, a name that's probably very familiar, Colonel Chris Hadfield, the former commander of the International Space Station, not necessarily the person that you would think would be participating in this program. Chris works with us in our space stream. We run a program on space. And if you ask Chris, as we did, saying, why are you here in our summer program? He said, I want to do everything I can to solve this. This is one way that I can volunteer my time. If we help any solutions get commercialized, it's making a difference. And, we had all sorts of interesting companies. Without going through all of them, we can talk a little bit about some of them. All of them you can read about in the newspaper. We had companies that were doing sort of supply chain solutions, because one of the challenges that were posed was around supply chains. We had a company called Tenera Care, which was building a hardware and software monitoring and analytics platform for long-term care facilities that could track that could monitor residents' locations so that they would know who's in contact with whom. We had a company out of the UK called Crowdless, which was a mobile app that helps people avoid queues and crowds, and many more. But we didn't stop there. As the program was winding down and we were getting ready to gear up into our sort of regular program year, we turned our sights on the next stage of the information problem, which was actually trying to reopen workplaces. And we said, this is crazy. Nobody can go back to work because everybody's afraid that an infectious person might come, even though most people aren't sick with the virus. And so we launched the CDL Rapid Screening Consortium. The Rapid Screening Consortium was a collection of some of Canada's largest companies who came together with the mission to develop a cost-effective system for reopening the economy during the pandemic. The idea was to develop a system capable of conducting COVID screens that could be administered for less than $1 a subject and produce results within 15 minutes with a false negative rate of less than 10% for infectiousness. Now, we're not there yet on the marginal cost, but we're getting there. Why a private sector consortium? It is very unusual to have such a diverse set of private sector companies come together to work so closely on something like this. The feeling was nobody was working on these off-the-shelf rapid screening solutions that could be deployed at scale. Very steep learning curve. So any one company that might try to go down this path would have to navigate that learning curve by itself. Which screens do we use? How do we deploy them? How do we capture the data? How do we guarantee privacy? How do we actually implement it at our workplace? And the feeling was, if we could get a bunch of companies working together and share information from each of their sites, we would more quickly arrive at something that could work at scale. And so we created the Rapid Screening Consortium, which was the goal of creating a public good for the world. And every company who came in and they paid to be part of it was committed to that mission. Each consortium member invested because they would see an ROI on their business, but in the process, they would solve problems and make those solutions later available to the world for free. They would figure out which screens work. They'd work out the supply chain. We'd build the data infrastructure. We'd navigate the regulatory requirements and develop standard operating procedures for implementing this across the country. The consortium members committed to systematically sharing learnings with each other to accelerate progress and develop confidence in the solution. And everyone committed that once a solution was developed that worked at scale, it would be shared freely. First with schools, then with other public-private sector organizations, all for the goal of reopening the economy as quickly and as safely as possible. To give you a sense of how big this has become, in the gray bar at the top, you can see our founding members. So these are brands that I suspect, company names that are familiar to everybody: Rogers and Scotiabank and Magna and Shoppers and Air Canada and Suncor. Since last August, really, when we put this together, so I guess we're 9 months from then, you can see below all of the companies who have joined the Rapid Screening Consortium. We have pilots underway, or they're beyond pilots in many of these at all sorts of locations. Here's just an example of some of the workplaces that are using our screen and our protocol to screen their workers twice a week in order to reopen their workplaces. Just to give you a sense of the magnitude, right now we have 114 sites currently operational, 53 more planned, one is complete, and over 90,000 screens have been deployed in workplaces since January up until about a week and a half ago. And this is I think a pretty incredible story of a CDL, which itself is a startup, trying to develop startups, turning its machinery on its head and saying, instead of bringing in all these innovative companies and trying to find markets for them. Let's start with the problem. Let's bring together, never before, I think, has the world, have businesses in so many diverse industries been so united in the need for a common solution to a common problem. It's gotten a considerable amount of attention, as you can see from these New York Times articles. Back in January, the New York Times ran a piece talking about what we were doing. And about a couple months later, back in March, the consortium started having meetings with the administration in the US, who are trying to build their own version of what we've done. So I think this could turn out to be a very nice Canadian export that we can all feel very good about. And so with that, I know I went through a lot quickly. Very excited to be able to share the work we've done to try to, get the world back to work in a way that preserves health and safety. And I will hand it back to Brett Hendry for a couple of concluding remarks before we wrap.
Thank you, Maura. That was fantastic. And indeed, thank you to Mark, Janet, and Jay for your presentations, which were so insightful and so appreciated. So there you have it, folks. 4 diverse takes on creating a healthier society and indeed a stronger economy. We hope you gleaned some insights that will help you navigate the road ahead. If you paid for your ticket today, watch your mailbox. You'll be receiving your copy of Rotman Management magazine in the mail in the next few weeks. And please mark your calendar for September 29th, when we are scheduled to launch the fall edition of Rotman Management. Until then, from everyone at Rotman, please have a great evening, and thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next time.